I couldn't believe how much effort I'd put into her birthday party. It was my idea from the start. Every detail, every dollar, every late night, spent planning. I wanted it to be perfect for her, my wife of 4 years, the woman I'd built my life around. The venue was this gorgeous rooftop place downtown, with a view of the city skyline that made your jaw drop. I'd ordered a 5-tier cake, chocolate and vanilla swirled together, her favorite. There was a champagne tower, too, the kind you see in movies, with glasses stacked so high they sparkled under the twinkling lights I'd paid extra to have strung up. I even had flowers flown in from halfway across the world. Orchids, bright and exotic, because she'd once said they were her dream bouquet. It cost me a fortune, but I didn't care. This was her night, and I wanted her to feel like the center of the universe. I stood there in my best suit, watching her laugh and mingle with our 60 guests, friends, family, people we'd known forever. I was proud. Tired, sure, but proud. She looked beautiful in the dress I'd picked out with her months ago, her hair catching the light just right. I thought, this is it. This is what marriage is about, making her happy. Then she grabbed the microphone. I figured she'd say something sweet, maybe thank me for pulling it all together. Instead, she raised her glass and started talking about Damian Rivera. My guiding light, she called him, her voice loud and clear over the hum of the crowd. The one who's been there for me through the toughest times. I stood there, frozen, my smile stuck on my face like it didn't know what else to do. Damian? The guy she worked with? The one she'd mentioned a few times. Always with this casual tone that I never thought twice about. My chest tightened, but I told myself to breathe, to wait it out. Maybe she'd get to me next. She didn't. Instead, she turned to me with this little smirk, like she was about to pull off some big joke. She handed me a gift bag, small and light, and said, "For you, honey." People chuckled, thinking it was cute. I opened it, expecting maybe a watch or a tie, something normal. But no, inside was a black t-shirt, designer brand, folded perfectly. I pulled it out, held it up, and there it was in bold white letters, divorced. The crowd went quiet for a second, then a few nervous laughs broke through. She grinned like it was the funniest thing in the world, like she'd just won some comedy award. My hands shook as I stared at the word. Divorced. 4 years of marriage. All the sacrifices. All the nights I stayed up late paying bills or planning things like this. And she thought this was edgy? Funny? My throat burned. I felt every pair of eyes on me, waiting for my reaction. I could have yelled. I could have thrown the shirt in her face and stormed off right then. But I didn't. I set the bag down, reached into my pocket, and pulled out the Cartier bracelet I'd bought her as her real birthday gift. It was gold, sleek, expensive, something I'd saved up for because I knew she'd love it. I placed it on the table next to the cake, right where everyone could see it. No words, no fuss. I just turned and walked out. The air hit my face as I stepped outside, sharp and cold, but I didn't stop. I heard the chatter fade behind me, the clink of glasses, the hum of confusion. I kept walking, my shoes clicking against the pavement, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break my ribs. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back in there. Not for her. Not for anyone. That t-shirt wasn't just a joke, it was a declaration, and I wasn't about to stand there and take it. The night air slapped me hard as I stepped out of that rooftop party, my tie flapping loose in the wind. I didn't even make it 10 steps before I stopped, my hands clenched into fists. I'd left the bracelet on the table, her birthday gift, the one I'd spent months picking out, the one I'd imagined her wearing with that big smile she used to give me. It was sitting there, abandoned, like some kind of trophy for her little stunt. And that t-shirt, divorced, kept flashing in my mind, those white letters burning holes into my skull. I couldn't leave it like that. I couldn't let her have the last word, not after she'd humiliated me in front of everyone we knew. So I turned around. My legs moved before my brain caught up, carrying me back through the glass doors, past the confused valet guy who'd barely opened his mouth to ask for my ticket. The party noise hit me again, laughter, clinking glasses, some upbeat songs she'd picked for the playlist. I didn't look at anyone, not her friends, not mine, not the waiters weaving through the crowd with trays of champagne. I marched straight to that table, the one with the cake and the flowers and the bracelet gleaming under the lights. She was still up front, chatting with Damian, her back to me, probably thinking I'd slink off like some wounded dog. I grabbed the bracelet, the cool metal slipping into my palm, and shoved it back into my pocket. No one said a word. A few heads turned, eyes wide, but nobody stopped me. Maybe they were too shocked. Maybe they didn't care. Either way, I was done. I walked out again, this time for good. The valet had my car ready by then. A black sedan I'd bought 2 years ago, one of the few things I'd insisted on keeping when she'd pushed for that overpriced SUV she wanted instead. I slid into the driver's seat, slammed the door, and just sat there for a minute, staring at the dashboard. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. The engine hummed to life, and I pulled out onto the street, the city lights blurring past me like they didn't even matter. 5 minutes later, it started. The first call. My phone lit up on the passenger's seat, her name glowing on the screen. I didn't pick up. It rang out, went silent, then lit up again, and again. By the time I hit the highway, it was nonstop, buzz after buzz, her name stacking up in missed call notifications. I glanced at it once, just long enough to see the number climb. 10 calls. 20. 50. I kept driving, the road stretching out dark and empty ahead of me. My hands gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. What did she want? To apologize? To laugh some more? To explain why she thought handing me that t-shirt in front of everyone was okay? I didn't care. Not anymore. The phone kept going, relentless, like she thought she could wear me down if she just tried hard enough. I pulled into my usual parking spot outside our apartment. No, my apartment now, and checked the screen. 157 missed calls. All from her. I turned the phone off, the silence hitting me like a wave. I sat there in the dark, the engine ticking as it cooled, and something clicked inside me. This wasn't just about the party. It wasn't just about walking out. That t-shirt, those calls, her thanking Damien instead of me, it was the end of us. For years of bending over backwards, of putting her first, of thinking if I just tried harder, she'd see me the way I saw her. And for what? To be the punchline of her big night? I grabbed my keys and stepped out, the cold biting at my face again. The apartment building loomed above me, quiet and familiar, but it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a shell, like something I'd outgrown without even realizing it. I didn't know what came next, where I'd go, what I'd do, but I knew one thing. I wasn't answering those calls. Not tonight. Not ever. I'd left the party, sure, but I'd left the marriage too. And she could keep calling all she wanted. I was already gone. I woke up the next morning on a lumpy couch in Theo's spare bedroom, the kind of place that smelled faintly of old coffee and dust. My suit jacket was crumpled on the floor, my tie slung over a chair like a dead snake. I'd driven straight to his place last night after leaving the party, my phone still off, those 157 missed calls locked away in the dark. Theo didn't ask many questions when I showed up, just opened the door, handed me a beer, and let me crash. Now, sunlight crept through the blinds, slicing across the bare walls, and I lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what the hell had happened to my life. Theo shuffled in, his hair a mess, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He set one on the table next to me, the steam curling up in lazy swirls, and sat down in an armchair that creaked under his weight. "You don't come back from something like that," he said, his voice low and certain, like he'd already thought it through. I didn't answer right away. I just took the coffee, the heat burning my fingers through the mug, and let his words sink in. He was right. I knew it the second she handed me that t-shirt, divorced, like it was some clever little gift. But it wasn't just the shirt. It was everything before it, all the pieces I'd ignored because I loved her, because I thought that's what you do when you're married. I sipped the coffee, bitter and strong, and my mind started replaying it all. The time she'd asked me to move cities for her job, promising it'd be worth it. I'd left a good gig behind, packed up our life, and followed her. Then there were the promotions I'd turned down because they'd mean less time at home, and she didn't like that. "We're a team," she'd say, and I'd nod, thinking it made sense. Vacations, too. I'd skip them, working extra shifts so she could chase her dreams, fly off to conferences, build her career. I never complained. I figured it was my job to support her, to be the steady one while she shined. And she did shine. People loved her, her charm, her laugh, the way she could light up a room. I loved that about her too. But last night, under those twinkling lights I'd paid for, she'd lit up for someone else. Dales. It felt good to be home, even if home now had the bittersweet edge of missing voices and past grievances. My mom and my aunt, they've always had this way of making even the simplest meal feel like a feast, and tonight was no exception. I was looking forward to a quiet evening, just family, sharing stories and catching up. The kids, exhausted by the day's adventures, fell asleep almost as soon as their heads hit the pillows. I kissed them goodnight and headed downstairs where my mom and aunt were in the kitchen, glasses of wine in hand, ostensibly relaxed. The murmur of their conversation greeted me as I approached, but it was my wife's name that caught my attention, halting my steps. "She thinks she's too good for us," my aunt's voice floated up, tinged with resentment. There was a clink of glass, probably my mom nodding in agreement as she added, "Yes, but don't bring it up around him. She's a snob, but it's not worth the argument." It stung, hearing that. There in the dim light of the stairwell, a knot tightened in my stomach. My wife has always been meticulous about how she interacts with my family, careful never to flaunt her background or make anyone feel less. She'd go out of her way to connect, to show interest in their lives, even if it meant stepping out of her comfort zone. Her reticence at times, I knew, was out of a fear of overstepping, not a feeling of superiority. Hearing my wife referred to in such terms, by my own family, sparked a heat in my chest that was hard to tamp down. I lingered on the stairs, unseen, a familiar ache of being caught between the people I loved surfacing once again. They continued, oblivious to my presence, airing grievances that were usually spoken in hushed tones behind closed doors. I wrestled with my emotions, debating whether to confront them or retreat. The decision was made for me when my mom glanced up and caught my eye, her expression shifting from surprise to something like guilt. The conversation snapped off, replaced by a tense silence that filled the room like smoke. "I heard what you said," I found myself speaking, my voice steadier than I felt. My aunt tried to brush it off, saying it was just a slip of the tongue, but the damage was done. The air was thick with unsaid things, with years of miscommunications and hurt feelings. I explained, maybe more sharply than I intended, that my wife had never acted superior, that she simply prioritized her career and our family's well-being over everything else. My wife grew up in a world quite different from mine. Born into a wealthy family, she was the only child, the sole focus of her parents' affection and hopes. Tragically, her parents passed away when she was still in her teens, an event that thrust her into premature adulthood. They left her everything, their sprawling estate, significant investments, and various other assets. Despite the wealth and responsibilities that fell on her shoulders at such a young age, she never let it define her. Instead, she channeled her energies into her studies and later, her career, proving to everyone that her achievements were born of her own intelligence and hard work, not just her inheritance. She enjoys the finer things in life, sure, the kind of luxuries she grew up with. High-end fashion, gourmet foods, vacations in far-flung destinations. But she carries it all with a grace and an ease that's devoid of arrogance. She's unapologetic about her tastes, yes, but never ostentatious. In contrast, I come from a solidly middle-class background. My family's world was smaller, our means more modest. We valued hard work, simple pleasures, and close community ties. Our house, always filled with warmth and laughter, was humble but happy. This stark difference in our upbringings was never lost on me, and initially I worried about how my family would perceive her, or she them. Despite these differences, my wife has never behaved superiorly or looked down on my upbringing. She's been nothing but respectful towards my family, always engaging in conversations, offering to help with meals during visits, and bringing thoughtful gifts that showed her attention to what they might appreciate, not just expensive items for the sake of display. Yet the underlying class difference sometimes creates an unspoken tension, especially with my mother. Mom, with her down-to-earth values and no-nonsense approach to life, has sometimes struggled to connect with my wife's world. Though my wife has made every effort to bridge the gap, ensuring she doesn't flaunt her wealth or make my family feel uncomfortable, there's always been a subtle, perhaps imagined, barrier there. This difference in backgrounds is sometimes amplified by the innocuous comments at family gatherings, or the slightly too long glances at my wife's designer clothes and accessories. I know it comes more from a place of unfamiliarity and perhaps a bit of envy, rather than any real disapproval. My wife understands this too, and handles such situations with a kindness and a deftness that make me love her all the more. She tries to put my family at ease, often downplaying her lifestyle and focusing on the many things we all have in common. "What are you talking about?" I demanded, the frustration evident in my voice. It was clear they hadn't intended for me to hear their words, and my mom's face fell, an apology forming on her lips. My aunt, ever the more confrontational, didn't back down. "She doesn't mingle with us like she's one of us because she thinks she's better," she stated bluntly, her eyes challenging me to contradict her. That hurt. It hurt because it wasn't true. "That's not it," I replied, my voice firm. "She's trying her best. Just because she doesn't always know how to show it, doesn't mean she feels she's above us. You're misreading her caution as contempt." My mom, softer, more apologetic, tried to soothe the rising tension. "We're just not used to her ways, that's all. Maybe we misjudged her a bit. she conceded, her eyes avoiding mine. But the damage was done. The evening's warmth evaporated, replaced by a chill that no amount of familial bond could easily dispel. I sat down with them, trying to explain further, sharing how my wife had often expressed her worries about not fitting in, about being seen as an outsider. It was a long conversation, one filled with admissions and reluctant understanding. My aunt listened, her expression showing defiance. They clearly didn't expect me to hear any of it, and my aunt said that my wife's refusal to interact with them is because she thinks she's better than them. I explained that isn't the case, but my aunt kept pushing the issue. Eventually my mom said it was fine if my wife felt that way, but I shouldn't defend her classist behavior. At this point I snapped and said that my wife resents my mom because she wasn't around when I was a kid. My mom and aunt didn't say anything to that, and I went back upstairs. After the conversation with my mom and aunt, the house felt colder, quieter. I needed to clear my head, so I stepped out onto the back porch, the night air crisp against my skin. Pulling out my phone, I sent a quick text to my sister, hoping she could offer some perspective. She's always had a way of seeing the middle ground, even when emotions ran high. Her response came back almost immediately, a testament to how often she played mediator in our family. Just apologize to mom and aunt, okay? It's not worth the fight. That was just like her, always advocating for peace, even if it meant swallowing your pride. I stared at the phone, her words glowing in the dim light. It wasn't that simple for me. I didn't hold a grudge against mom for the choices she made when we were kids. I understood they were made under the weight of immense grief. But hearing her and my aunt speak so dismissively about my wife, as if her efforts to fit in and respect their ways meant nothing, stirred a defensiveness in me I couldn't easily quash. It wasn't just the words themselves that had cut deep, it was the realization that these conversations had probably happened before, not just tonight. That my mom and aunt had likely shared these thoughts between themselves, painting my wife in a light that was so far from the truth. It felt like a betrayal, not just to my wife, but to the efforts we'd both made to bridge our very different worlds. Sitting there in the quiet of the night, I typed out a response to my sister. I get what you're saying, but it's not just about making peace. They don't see how hard she tries, or how their words might make her feel unwelcome. I didn't expect my sister to fully understand. Her approach was different, shaped by her own experiences and personality. I knew I would eventually need to address this with mom and my aunt, to clear the air, or at least to make my stance clear. But I also knew an apology from me wouldn't fix the underlying issue, that my family still held on to preconceived notions about my wife, notions that weren't fair or accurate. The house was quiet, the only sounds the occasional distant bark of a neighborhood dog, and the soft hum of the refrigerator. The conversation with my mom and aunt had left a palpable tension hanging in the air, thick enough to choke on. Alone in the small guest room where we were staying, I replayed the evening's events over in my mind, each word and sharp glance looping endlessly. In hindsight, I could see where I might have approached things differently. Maybe I could have been calmer, more diplomatic, instead of letting my emotions get the best of me. But in that moment, hearing them talk about my wife like that, someone who had tried so hard to be part of this family, despite feeling like an outsider, it felt like an instinctive need to protect her had overridden everything else. My wife wasn't just my partner, she was the mother of my children, the person who stood by me unconditionally. Defending her wasn't just a reaction, it felt like a duty. I leaned back against the headboard, the mattress creaking slightly under my weight. The room was filled with old family photos and knickknacks, a stark reminder of the deep roots and history my family had in this place. It made my decision even more difficult knowing that leaving early would be like admitting defeat, like letting those petty comments drive us away. But staying felt untenable too, with every forced smile and careful conversation just adding layers to an already thick facade. The kids were asleep in the next room, blissfully unaware of the grown-up complexities clouding the air around them. I didn't want their memories of this trip to be marred by a sense of underlying conflict, or to feel the tension that I was so acutely aware of. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through it aimlessly for a few moments before I made the decision. I'd booked flights for us to go back home earlier than planned. It wasn't just about escaping an uncomfortable situation, it was about preserving the peace and mental well-being of my family. My wife, who hadn't even come on this trip, deserved to know that her feelings were validated, not just by words, but by actions. As I looked up flights, I realized this was more than just a logistical change, it was a statement. I wasn't just leaving early, I was making it clear that while family was important, the respect and well-being of my immediate family, my wife and kids, came first. She's not opposed to the idea of visiting my home country, and has done so in the past. Her job is just very demanding and she said she'd rather do a longer trip with the four of us. We have 2 kids, when she can arrange more time off and the trip isn't solely based on seeing my mom. My wife's relationship with my home country, and especially with my family, is complicated to say the least. She's not against the idea of visiting. In fact, she's joined me several times before. But her job in corporate law is demanding. Long hours, constant deadlines, high stakes. That kind of pressure doesn't pause for anything, not even family trips across the globe. She's practical about it. She told me once, over a late dinner while the kids were already in bed, that she would rather wait and take a longer trip together with the four of us. If we're going to travel that far, let's make it a real vacation, not just a quick visit, she had said. Her logic was sound. It wasn't just about the travel time but also about the opportunity to truly relax and enjoy each other's company, without the shadow of obligations or past tensions lurking in the background. The last part is crucial because the trips to see my mom have often been tense. It's nobody's fault really. It's just that their worlds are so different, and my mom has this way of making her opinions known in a manner that's a bit too straightforward for my wife, who is accustomed to the more measured, polite exchanges of her professional world. So, this time around, when the opportunity came for me and the kids to visit my mom, my wife encouraged us to go while she stayed behind to manage a major case at work. She framed it as practicality, not preference. Go, have fun with your mom. The kids miss her, and it's important they spend time with her, she had said, kissing me goodbye as we headed for the airport. She's always been clear about boundaries. If my mom were to visit us, she would welcome her with open arms, offer her the guest room, cook her meals, and engage in pleasant conversation. There's no animosity, just a preference to avoid situations she knows will be uncomfortable. This isn't just about personal comfort, it's about maintaining peace, about ensuring that when we do spend time together, it's quality time, not just obligated time filled with awkwardness and forced conversations. My wife has always been very composed about her feelings towards my mom. She isn't the type to harp on things unnecessarily. Early on, back when our relationship was shifting from serious to truly committed around the time of our engagement, I asked her point blank about her hesitation towards my mom. It was a quiet evening, just the two of us cleaning up after a quiet dinner at home, when I broached the topic. Her response was straightforward, devoid of any malice. She explained that the unease stemmed from my mom's long absence in my childhood, which to her signaled potential complexities in family dynamics she'd rather not entangle herself with more than necessary. She wasn't judgmental about it, she just laid out her feelings with the kind of clarity and foresight she applies to most things in life. It's about ensuring we have less stress in our interactions, so we can enjoy our time together as a family when it happens, she had said, her tone even, but firm. That conversation set the tone for how things would be, and true to her word, she hasn't brought it up unless absolutely necessary. Over the years, becoming a parent myself has opened my eyes further to her perspective. The thought of not being there for my kids, of leaving them prematurely, is unbearable. I see now how my wife's understanding of family and commitment could be so deeply affected by my mom's choices. Having children has a way of amplifying the protective instincts, the desire for stability and presence. It's clarified for me why my wife places such a premium on these qualities, and it's helped me appreciate her stance, even if I don't always fully share her reservations. Update. It's been a few months since I made my post. After reading your comments, I realized it would be rash to leave without trying to sort things out, so I had a conversation with my mom the next morning when my aunt was out and my kids were still in bed. The morning after the tense conversation with my mom and aunt, I approached my mom for a private talk. The house was quiet, with soft light filtering through the curtains, casting a calm over the living room where we decided to sit down. I could tell she was apprehensive about the discussion, perhaps worried about more confrontations. I started by apologizing for my outburst the previous night. My tone was firm yet conciliatory. I wanted to clear the air but also to stand by my wife's perspective, which I felt was important to communicate clearly. I'm sorry for how I reacted, I began. But we need to talk about why you think it's okay to say those things about my wife. My mom nodded, her expression one of regret mixed with a hint of defensiveness. She listened as I reiterated that the comments I overheard were hurtful and simply not true. If there are issues, we should be able to discuss them openly, not just let them fester, I added, hoping to establish a more open line of communication. My mom sighed, a long, weary exhalation that seemed to carry the weight of the past decades. I understand, but you need to see where I'm coming from too, she responded. She then explained how isolating it was for her after my dad passed away, how she needed to be around her own family back home to grieve. It wasn't about escaping from you or your sister, she insisted. I listened, trying to bridge my understanding with her experience. I get that, Mom, and I don't think anyone faults you for needing support, I said. But my wife sees it differently. She can't understand leaving kids behind during such a critical time, regardless of the grief. My mom bristled slightly at this. It's unfair for her to judge my actions from back then. She wasn't there. She didn't see the pain I was in. Her voice broke a little, her eyes conveying the turmoil of those days. You and your sister don't hold it against me, do you? I shook my head, trying to reassure her while also explaining my wife's point of view. We don't resent you, Mom, because we love you and we know you did what you felt was necessary. But you have to understand that my wife views family responsibilities differently, especially now that we have our own kids. The conversation moved slowly, with pauses that were filled with unspoken thoughts and regrets. I stressed that my wife's feelings were valid, just as her actions had been to her at the time. It's not about right or wrong, I concluded. It's about understanding each other's perspectives and finding a way to respect them. I can't make my wife forgive you, Mom, I said, trying to keep my voice even despite the frustration building inside me. And I need you to stop speaking poorly about her. It's important you tell Aunt Jane to do the same. Mom listened, her expression a mix of understanding and helplessness. I'll do what I can, you know I will, she replied. But then she added, but I can't control what your aunt says or does, she has her opinions. This response frustrated me further. But don't you see? It's not just about opinions. It's about respect. If there's talk like that going on, it creates an environment I don't want around our kids. They pick up on everything, Mom. The idea of my children overhearing such comments about their mother worried me deeply. I can't be comfortable in a place where my wife, their mom, is disrespected. It's not just about us adults, it's about what kind of example we set for them. Mom nodded slowly, seemingly understanding the gravity of my concerns, but she held firm on her stance about my aunt. I'll talk to her, I promise. I'll try to make her see. But you know how she is, stubborn, and I can't openly criticize her. She's helped me through a lot. The room fell silent for a moment as I processed her words. The sunlight streaming through the window cast long shadows across the floor, a stark reminder of the day moving forward while we seemed stuck in this impasse. I looked at my mom, seeing the years of strain etched into her face, realizing that her relationship with her sister was just as complex as any other family dynamic. I understand she's family, I finally said. And I get that you've supported each other through thick and thin. But this is important. It's about protecting my family's well-being. Mom sighed, a sound of resignation mixed with resolve. I'll do my best, she repeated, her tone more assured this time. No one should feel unwelcome in my home. Things weren't going anywhere, so I told my mom I was going to go home early. She got upset and defensive, and I realized she would also keep bad-mouthing my wife, just when I wasn't around. That was the final straw. I went back upstairs and got flights for the next day. Net, I'd always been. I wasn't that guy anymore. The next morning, I ran my usual route, the air crisp and sharp in my lungs. 6 miles turned into 7, my legs pumping harder, my mind clear. I didn't think about the letter. I thought about the seminar next week, the lecture in Dubai, the app launch with Sasha and Omar. When I got back, I showered, dressed, and headed to work. Gregory stopped me in the hall, grinning. You're on fire lately, he said. Keep it up. I nodded, feeling the weight of it. Not her weight. Not anymore, but mine. The letter stayed in the drawer, a ghost I didn't need to fight. She could miss me all she wanted. I was done missing her. I started writing one night after a long day at work, sitting at my desk with a beer in hand, and the city humming outside my window. It wasn't planned, just grabbed a notebook and let my thoughts spill out. At first, it was messy, raw, all about the party, the t-shirt, those 157 missed calls. I wrote about how it felt to stand there, humiliated, while she smirked and the room laughed. I wrote about walking out, taking the bracelet back, driving away. It wasn't for anyone else. Just me, a way to get it out of my head and onto paper. But the more I wrote, the more it turned into something else. It wasn't just about her or us anymore. It was about what came after, running every morning, rebuilding my life, saying no to the old me who'd waited around for her approval. I filled pages with it, night after night, the words piling up like bricks in a wall I was building around myself. One evening, after a run, I typed it all into my laptop. It felt different seeing it on the screen, cleaner, sharper. I didn't know why, but I hit publish on a random blog site, no name attached, just some anonymous guy's story. I called it 157 Missed Calls, not because I wanted her to see it, but because it fit. Then I forgot about it. A week later, I checked the site. There were comments, dozens of them. This is my life, one said. I felt every word, said another. People I didn't know, from places I'd never been, were reading it, connecting to it. I sat there, staring at the screen, my heart thumping. It wasn't just my story anymore, it was theirs too. I kept writing. Every few days, I post something new, how I started running to feel alive again, how work became my lifeline, how I stopped caring what she thought. The blog grew. Hundreds of views turned into thousands. Emails started coming in, people thanking me, asking questions. How did you move on? One asked. What do you do when you feel stuck? Another wrote. I answered them, not as some expert, but as me, someone who'd been there, who'd figured it out one step at a time. It wasn't about her falling apart or me getting revenge. It was about choosing myself, about waking up every day and building something new. One morning, over coffee with Theo, I told him about it. It's a blog, I said, shrugging like it was no big deal. People like it. He raised an eyebrow, smirking. You're a writer now, Mr. Big Shot. I laughed. No, just a guy with a laptop. But it was more than that. The next week, a woman stopped me at a coffee shop downtown. Are you the 157 guy? She asked, her eyes wide. I froze, cup halfway to my mouth. Maybe. She smiled. I read your stuff. It got me through my breakup. Thank you. I didn't know what to say, just nodded, mumbled something about being glad it helped. She walked away, and I sat there, stunned. It was real now, not just words on a screen. People were finding me, recognizing me. The blog turned into a movement. I started a newsletter, then a social media page. 157 missed calls became a thing. Readers called it that, shared it, made it their own. Companies reached out, asking me to speak, to write for them. I said yes to a few, small gigs at first, like a local workshop where I talked about rebuilding after betrayal. 50 people showed up, hanging on my words, clapping when I finished. Then bigger ones came: panels, podcasts, a guest post for a magazine. I wasn't anonymous anymore. I put my name on it, owned it. Sasha and Omar got in on it too. You should brand this, Sasha said one night at the diner, his laptop open to the app's latest numbers. T-shirts, man. Not divorced, but something better. I laughed, but he was serious. We tossed ideas around, and I liked it, not for money, but for meaning. Rebuilt, I said finally. That's the word. They nodded, and a week later, I had a prototype, a black shirt, simple white letters, rebuilt. It wasn't about her. It was about me, about everyone who'd read the blog and found their way back. The movement grew, and I grew with it. I wasn't just the guy who walked out anymore. I was the guy who kept going. It was pouring rain one evening when I heard the knock on my apartment door. I was in the middle of tuning my guitar, something I'd picked up again after years of letting it gather dust. The sound was sharp, insistent, 3 quick raps over the drumming of water against the windows. I set the guitar down, my stomach tightening for no reason I could name, and walked over. When I opened the door, there she was. No umbrella, no coat, just her standing there, soaked to the bone. Her hair clung to her face, mascara streaking down her cheeks, and for a second, I didn't recognize her, not the polished version I'd known, the one who'd smirked at me under those party lights. She looked small, fragile, like the rain had washed away everything she used to be. Can I come in? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't say anything at first, just stepped aside and let her walk past me. She dripped onto the floor, leaving little puddles by the couch, but I didn't care about that. I shut the door and turned to face her, arms crossed, waiting. She didn't sit, just stood there, hugging herself like she was cold. I miss you, she said finally, her eyes locked on mine. We were good. I didn't move, didn't blink. The words hung there, heavy and wet, but they didn't hit me like they might have once. No, I said, my voice steady. I was good. You were lucky. She flinched, like I'd slapped her, and then the tears came quiet at first, then louder, her shoulders shaking. I messed up, she said between sobs. I know that. The party, Damien, all of it. I was stupid. I didn't mean to lose you. I watched her, this woman I'd loved for years, crying in my living room, and I waited to feel something: anger, pity, anything. But it didn't come. I'd already felt it all: the hurt, the betrayal, the slow burn of realizing I'd been invisible to her. I'd mourned us months ago, mile by mile on those morning runs, page by page in my block. She kept going, words tumbling out. I thought I could do it without you. The job, the podcast, everything, it's gone now. Damien left, and I'm drowning, and I need you. There it was again, need. She needed me now, when her world was falling apart, when the spotlight she'd chased had flickered out. I stepped closer, not to comfort her, but to make sure she heard me. You didn't need me when you handed me that T-shirt, I said. You didn't need me when you thanked him instead of me. You don't get to need me now. Her face crumpled, and she sank onto the couch, hands covering her eyes. I didn't sit. I stood there, looking down at her, and saw it all: the party, the calls, the letters she'd sent. This was her last play, her final shot at pulling me back. But I wasn't that guy anymore. "I'm sorry," she whispered, over and over, like it could change something. I didn't say anything else. What was there to say? She'd made her choice that night, and I'd made mine when I walked out. The rain kept pounding outside, a steady roar that filled the silence between us. After a while, she stood up,